Today we're going to be solving by factoring, and so before we were back in the first quarter we were just solving the regular way maybe that you remember how to do in junior high, but what we're doing now that you guys know how to factor, I'm going to show you guys how to factor now, and be able to solve an equation. And so what makes this a little different from the factoring that we've been doing is that you'll see that all of these have an equal sign now. If you go back to your notes, they don't have, the things we were factoring before didn't have an equal sign. So remember, that's really what sets solving apart from just simplifying. Solving means there's an equal sign somewhere that we're going to be solving for something, okay? So let's go ahead and work these out, and I've given you some steps to help you with these. And so when we're solving by factoring, the first thing you want to do is to make sure that the equation has a 0 on one side. Okay, so one side is 0 and then everything else is on the other side. Once you've separated everything, so you have a 0 on one side and then all of the other terms and stuff on the other side, you want to factor the other side. And once you've factored, you're going to solve the equation by setting each factor to 0. So that sounds like a lot. It's almost like, what am I talking about here? So let's go ahead and just work this out and see how it goes. So for number 1, let's go step by step. So first step, write the equation with 0 on one side. So I already did that, right? This right side already has 0 right here. So all I can do now is let's move to the second step, factor the other side of the equation. So we know how to do this. We can use our box trick, right? So there's a mystery 1 in front of that x squared, so I have a 1 and 1. 12, maybe 4 and 3. My goal is I'm going to be subtracting to get the middle number, which is 1. Remember, my back sign is a minus, so when I'm done factoring, I'm going to have two parentheses that have different signs. Okay, so let's see if this works out. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 4 is 4. If you subtract, you get 1, so these are the right factors. So here we go. I do them across here. So the 1 and the 4, the 1 and the 3 go together. Which one's bigger? 1 times 3 or 1 times 4? 1 times 4 is bigger, so the 4 gets the plus. So I get x plus 4, x minus 3. Okay. Once you've factored, we can move on to step 3, and all you're going to do in step 3 is you set each of the factors to 0. So this guy's a factor, and this guy's a factor, and so what we do is we set them each equal to 0. And we solve. Okay, so for this first one, I add 3 to both sides. Cancel. X equals 3. So one of my answers is going to be x equals 3. Excuse me. Subtract 4 on both sides. X equals negative 4. And so that's it. Our two answers for this is positive 3 and negative 4. Okay, so that would be our final answers for number 1. Let's go ahead and look at number 2. Going step by step, here we go. Get 0 on one side, which I've already done. Okay, I already have a 0 here on the side. Factor the other side of the equation. Looking at all of these guys, I've already factored it for you, so I've done all the work for you already. So all we have to do now is solve the equation by setting each factor to 0. So there's 3 factors in this time. So you for sure know the b plus 2 is going to be a factor. The b plus 5 is going to be a factor, but the 6b is also a factor. So all 3 of those things are going to be set to 0. There we go. Okay, so to get in this first one, to be able to solve for b, I got to divide both sides by 6. These cancel. Remember, when you have a 0 on the top, it just equals 0, so there's one answer. For this one, I'm going to subtract 5 over. So these 5's end up canceling out, and so 0 minus 5 is negative 5. So there's one answer for me. And then the b plus 2, subtract 2 on both sides. These cancel, so b equals negative 2. Okay? So there's are my three answers. B equals 0, B equals negative 5, and B equals negative 2. Okay? We're just going to keep practicing with these different combinations here so that you can get used to this. So you got to be a strong factoring person, otherwise you're going to be in trouble with these. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Here we go, number 3. First step, get 0 on one side. So I didn't help you out this time. Unfortunately, I didn't get a 0 on one side for you. So looking at this, my suggestion for you guys is if you have something that's z squared or x squared or something that's squared, you want to make sure that that term is positive. So the reason why I'm telling you that is because you're going to have an option right now to either move the 80 over to the left side or the 5z squared to the right side. I'm going to tell you to move the 80 because you want to keep this squared thing positive. If you move that over to the other side, it's going to become negative because you're going to have to subtract it over. So instead, let's go ahead and subtract the 80 over to both sides. Okay, so that's going to cancel out. So on this left side, what I have is 5z squared minus 80 equals 0. Okay, this one now I got a factor, and it's not so obvious, and I'm going to give you this trick that I hope you'll always remember when you're factoring and solving and all of this stuff. Usually when you do not know what to do to factor this, it's because you have to pull out a GCF. So people always forget about GCF. They overlook it all the time. So if you don't know what to do and you're staring at something, you don't know how to factor it, it's because it has a GCF. So what's the GCF of these guys? That's a big hint already. They told that of how to factor this. I told you. So they both have a 5 in common. So if you pull out a 5 from both of them, what's going to be left, if you believe me or not, is this. Okay, 5z squared minus 16. And so what will happen here is we're not done because we can still factor this inside part here, z squared minus 16. It's a difference of two squares. Remember, we have two things here, and they're separated by a minus sign. So difference of two squares, remember, looks like this. Okay, now this is completely factored as much as it could. So what you want to do with this is set each factor to 0 now, and I'm going to show you something cool. So how many things am I going to be setting to 0? I have 1, 2, and 3, okay? So let's look at this first one. 5 equals 0. Is that true? Does 5 equal 0? Are they the same number? No, they're not, okay? So we're going to disregard this data because it's not true. So whenever you have a number and you're setting it equal to 0, it's not going to be true because the only thing that equals 0 is 0. So 4 doesn't equal 0, 7 doesn't equal 0. So if you have just a regular number here like this, you can cross it out. Whereas in number 2, see how it was 6b? 6b equals 0, we still don't know what b is, so there's a possibility that it could equal 0, okay? But if it's just a regular number, you can cross it out and disregard that information there. Here we go, let's solve for the other two though. I can go add 4, and then this one, subtract 4, subtract 4. So I have two answers for this guy. Z equals positive 4, Z equals negative 4. Okay. Alright, just practicing some problems, so you guys gotta get used to them too. Let's try one more, and then I'm gonna give you one to try by yourself to factor, okay? So here we go. 6n squared plus 11n equals 10. First step is to get 0 on one side. I want to move the 10 over because I want to leave this squared thing positive, okay? So that's how you know it's going to be the 10 that's going to be moved over. So we're going to subtract 10 on both sides. So that's going to make these guys cancel out. So I have, and then I'll have 0 on that side, nothing left there. So I'll have now 6n squared plus 11n minus 10. So let's see if they have a GCF in common here. No GCF in common between 6, 11, and 10, so we're just going to have to factor this another way. My gut reaction tells me to factor this as a using the box trick. So maybe we can do 2 and 3. I don't know, 5 and 2 maybe. Okay, so remember this time I'm subtracting to get the middle number to get 11 because it's a minus sign in the back. Minus sign in the back also tells me that we're going to have opposite signs. Okay. And the bigger product is getting the plus because the first sign's the plus. So here we go. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 5 is 15. And if I subtract, oh, I get 11. Yes, first try. Okay, so let's see which product's bigger. 2 times 2 or 3 times 5. 3 times 5 is bigger, so at the top of the arrow, it gets the plus. Okay, and then we get a minus right here. So here is this. Okay, so we have in the first parenthesis 3n minus 2, and then 2n plus 5. To solve, we set each of these parentheses equal to 0. So first thing for this one is add 2. Divide by 3. So there's a factor, 2 over 3. Now let's work on the other one. Subtract 5, subtract 5. Then we divide by 2. So our other factor is going to be n equals negative 5 over 2. Okay? So, as I promised you, I'm going to give you guys one more to try out by yourself. I won't talk. I'll probably start you off on this one, then you can finish it out. So here's the one I want you to try. 18y to the third plus 66y squared minus 24y equals 0. So I already hooked you up. I already got you a 0 right here on the right side. So all you have to do now is go to the factoring step. Before you factor, make sure you check and see if they have a GCF. Okay? So make sure you see if they have a GCF first, which they do. Okay, the GCF is going to be 6y. So here we go, 6y, and then we end up with okay. So now you can go and see how this is going to end up working out for you. Okay. So don't forget to take the quiz at the end. It's not going to